Hi, my name is Keith David Wattenpaw, and I want to thank Mark Mamagonian and Nasser for inviting me to participate in this evening's events, even though I'm obviously not there. And it's just a great pleasure even to appear in this way with my colleagues Lerna and Huri, and to talk with you about some of my experiences with the Panian memoir, something that I'm very, very proud of my contribution to. I'm also hoping to come out to Massachusetts in January. I'll be helping transform Asya Darbinian into Dr. Asya Darbinian as part of her committee at Clark. And it's my hope to spend some time out there with Nasser and my friends and colleagues in the Armenian studies community. I just wanted to share with you that would be talking about my brand new book, Bread from Stones, The Middle East and the Making of Modern Humanitarianism, which addresses the development of modern humanitarianism, relief, and institutions for care, including those of the League of Nations Rescue Home, in the period after the Armenian Genocide. And I think the book is very good, and it seems to be attracting a great deal of very positive attention. And it's also where I first encountered the work of Panian. I'd known some about it from Fisk had written, Robert Fisk, the British journalist, had written some about it. And I also knew about the memoir and have looked over an Armenian version of it. And it plays a very important role in my book, where I look at the relationship between Near East relief organizations and officials and Armenian genocide orphans. And I blend his account together with the accounts of the great writer Antranik Zaruchian, whose book Dream Like Aleppo is absolutely beautiful and really gives you a sense of the kind of Dickensian conditions that Armenian genocide orphans faced, even in Near East relief orphanages, which were really among the best. And then I also used the memoir of Asri Ayvakian, who was a young woman from Gurun who was twice deported, and she ended up in an orphanage under Near East relief care at Antilias. And when she was a teenager, was brought from Antilias to the American University Hospital in Beirut, where she was trained as a nurse, had to learn English very quickly, and she eventually became a prominent nurse educator at the AUH and in the healthcare community there in Beirut. She chronicles in her memoir her sort of transformation into a very successful professional woman in Lebanese society. Interestingly, I knew about the memoir in part because my father, who had been going to school in Beirut, on his way back to America to start college in the early 1960s, sat next to her on an airplane flying from Beirut to New York, and she said told my dad it was her first time on a plane, and they got to talking, and she promised to send my father her memoir, and indeed they did. And so I was very happy when Huri contacted me and asked me to read the English translation of the memoir itself. I wasn't aware that this project was underway, and I was so happy to learn that she had done so. And she also used the line that I talked with your mother-in-law, and she thought this would be a good project. So, of course, I had no choice to help her out. And I read it all in one sitting. And it was long, but I read it all in one sitting, and I thought, this is really marvelous. Not only is this, I knew at that moment that it was not just an important book in the canon of Armenian genocide literature, but rather it was something that really spoke to much broader issues of children and violence, identity, recovery, resilience, issues that are really part of the larger canon of the literature of human rights witness. And as a teacher in human rights and also genocide, I in fact teach I think at this point, the largest comparative genocide course in the state of California, and certainly one of the only ones that reaches a very large number of young people every year about the Armenian genocide itself. That I'm always looking for first-person accounts, and I knew that this would be an account that my students would move them, it would speak to them. It's something that they really would, I think enjoy's the wrong word, but appreciate and be able to learn something from. So I also knew that it was too long and it needed a pretty good editing job. So I approached a friend of mine, Kate Wall, who's the acquisitions editor at Stanford University Press, who's published Lerna's book and the absolutely marvelous book of Bedros Dermatosian, and will be publishing the other Professor Wattenpaugh's book. Of course, that's Helena Wattenpaugh, the noted art historian. And I said, this is marvelous. And so I was able to persuade her then to send it out for peer review. And let me pause for a moment and say why I thought it was important to take this book to a university press. And I shared many of these ideas with Huri at the time, which is that I've seen over the last several years some absolutely marvelous books in the literature of witness of the genocide, including the work of Zebelia Sayan, which is not just about the genocide, but about her life before the war. Translated into English by various organizations, and I think they've been marvelous. I've been so happy with that. But the problem is that it often will reach a very narrow audience. And the other issue is that if a university press publishes a book, it has a kind of imprimatur of scholarly excellence. And that certainly was something I wanted to accomplish by asking Stanford to look it over. And the other thing is, it's promoted. It's promoted in catalogs. It's promoted online. There's a good supply. The suppliers can get the books out. Representatives of the press go to conferences, the Middle East Studies Association conference, the American Historical Conference. The book will live on, and by all accounts, it's been selling very well. And I know 80 of my students will be buying it next quarter in their for the Armenian genocide class. For the comparative genocide course. So the process was really great. I mean, it came at a kind of difficult time for me. I was finishing up my own book, and also had just returned from a very difficult research mission amongst Syrian refugee university scholars and Syrian university refugee students and scholars in southern Turkey, which was took a deep psychological toll on my colleagues and me who had done the work. So but I still felt it was super important to try to get it done. And I was very, very thankful that Aram Koutsoutsian, who is a noted historian of American history and Huri's nephew, was able to step in and handle much of the editing. And then I offered some assistance in reading it through and making sure that the history worked, and some of it didn't, but we were able to fix that. And then, of course, I wrote the foreword and the afterword. And it was just a great privilege to be associated with the project. And I thought I'd just read to you from the introduction, I think, one of my favorite stories that comes from this period. And this is from a letter that Bayard Dodge, who was at the time a faculty member at AUB and the son of one of the wealthiest men in American history, wrote to his father about the liberation of the Antura orphanage by American relief officials and Armenian church officials. The turning over of the Antura orphanage to the care of American relief officials as Ottoman authority melted away, this would have been in 1918, sheds light on the least understood part of this element of the crime of genocide: children's resistance to transfer and the loss of identity. As Bayard Dodge, a member of the faculty of the Syrian Protestant College and later president of the American University of Beirut, explained in a report at the end of the war, as soon as the management of the institution was placed in the hands of the American Red Cross in Beirut, quote, immediately the Armenian children asserted their rights. They refused to use their Turkish names, and they brought out Armenian books, which they had hidden away in secret places during the Turkish regime, unquote. It is both remarkable and telling of the nature of identity that the young orphans, even subjected to the harsh discipline of Antura, managed to save a part of themselves, the memory of their origins, and to safeguard and protect forbidden objects that connected them to their murdered parents and the communities from which they had been torn. The new American and Armenian caregivers of the orphanage began to reconnect the young people to the Armenian community, fostering family reunification and organizing those who were orphaned into makeshift families of blended older and younger children, often overseen by a late teenage girl. I've always wanted, it must have been an amazing sight when these American relief officials sort of drove up the coast from Beirut and happened upon this orphanage that had no adult supervision. And it's, I think, a testament to the resiliency of the young people who were there, that they did assert their identity after the Americans came, but they never lost it in many ways. So I want to conclude my remarks with that idea, and really wish I was there to hear Hori and Lerna, and I hope to see many of you when I come out to the Boston area.